Welcome to the Naples International Film Festival. For our audience at home, tell us a little bit about the film without giving away too much.
It's called Long December. It's about a musician chasing the dream, and it's about hopes and ambitions and that tension all of us artists feel and ask of, are we going to make it, or maybe next year will be the year.
Tell us where the inspiration for this film came from.
Yeah, the inspiration of the film definitely came from a period of my life where I was asking the question, when do you got to let the dream go? And I'm not a full-time musician. I'm kind of an amateur musician. I like to play, and I was playing on my guitar and kind of came up with a chorus, when do you got to let the dream go? And it was bittersweet because I was asking that as a filmmaker, and I've had enough success to where it keeps me going, but not enough to where you feel like you've really broken through. And I was living in that unhealthy tension where we're living too much in the future, asking, will next year be my big break? And I really had to reckon with that unhealthy tension, and so I made a film about a guy coming to terms with that question. Instead of a filmmaker, my lead character is a musician, but it's really a proxy for myself and all of us artists who have that tension, who have that struggle, regardless of our art.
Talk to me about the casting, because the casting was so wonderful and so powerful.
We cast Stephen Williams, who fronts the band Jude Moses, and he's an amazing musician. He's been working musician for a long time. We were casual friends at the time, and I knew I needed a musician who could act as opposed to an actor who could maybe play. And Stephen had never acted before, and frankly, he didn't know if he could act, and I kind of convinced him to consider doing my film because I knew him. He had a quality when I watched him perform that was the quality that I wanted for this character, and I hadn't even fully written the script yet, so I was willing to write it around Stephen and his strengths. And we talked, and he was very apprehensive about doing the movie and acting. He was like, I'll play, but I don't know if I can act. So we did a test screening where he read some scenes, and he was just so effortless, so natural reading these scenes. And then it clicked for him during that test screen test, where he said, I've had these conversations before. I get this guy. I can do this. And so at that point, I took the big swing and cast him, and he's really got to carry the movie. He's in every scene. He's our lead. He's the proxy for all of us artists, and he's singing all of these incredible songs. Some of them, a couple of them are his songs that we repurposed. Some we wrote brand new for the film, and some are old Christmas carols because the film is set in December, which is a good sort of setting for that question of what have I done this year and how will next year be different. So I couldn't be more thrilled with Stephen Williams, and he's got an incredible career in film if he wants it.
You know, your film deals with depression and the blues of not only the holiday season, but,
yes.
You know, your title is Long December.
Yeah.
And right now, when we're taping this, we're at the end of October.
Yeah.
We're getting into, especially if you live in the north, you're getting into the gloomy season stuff. So talk to me about the choice of the title of the film, and then we'll jump into some of the mental health aspects.
I appreciate you drawing attention to that. Melancholy does frame this film in a big way. We kind of lean into the melancholy that can happen around Christmas. It is not by any means sort of a bright, cheery Christmas film. I called it Long December because I wanted a film that was evocative of the setting, of the season, but that also sort of took a nod to the music. There's a famous song from the 90s by the Counting Crows called A Long December, and the film has nothing to do with it, but it's for those people who love that band and that song. It reminds them of sort of the independent music artist journey. So that all played into it. And, you know, the character is playing at pubs, he's playing at malls, he finally gets a break playing on a big stage. So there's very much this indie singer-songwriter quality of the film set during this December sort of gloom in the Southeast. We filmed it outside of Charlotte, and there's something very particular about Southeast Christmas because it doesn't snow. So it almost, but all the trees have no leaves. So it adds to this sort of gloom and melancholy, which, frankly, for a lot of us sort of living in this idea of, will next year be the year, December can be sort of a melancholic type of season.
You know, you touch on that, and you touch on a lot of, depression and stuff that a lot of people struggle with. If you don't struggle with yourself, you know someone that does.
Yeah.
So how did you tackle that subject without being too careless about it, but
Yeah.
also to tell me about the self-care that you guys did on set to make sure that your talent, but also to the crew, was okay mentally?
Well, I'm so glad that resonated because it wasn't even an intentional sort of agenda or a mission to sort of, hey, we're going to tackle mental health, we're going to lean into depression. Every artist living with the tension of bleeding for their art, bleeding for trying to make it at a full-time capacity, or like the character in the film, like myself, if you have a wife and children depending on you, the stakes can be so high, and so the ups and downs of life can be, the highs can be high and the lows can be very low, and that is such a natural part of the artist's tension. So it was only inevitable that we explored that in the film, but it happened very naturally. Like I said, it wasn't an intentional effort or mission.
It was very organic.
Yeah,
and
good.
It wasn't in your face like some films are.
And it's also, there's a bittersweet quality to the film without sort of giving too much away. There's very much, it's a film a friend of mine saw and he gave me the greatest compliment. He said, this is a film that gives you permission to quit if it's too hard. It's a film that gives you permission to keep going. And I was like, that, you just summed up sort of the whole goal. And when you're dealing with sort of the artist struggle, sometimes people need to let the dream go and live a peaceful life, to have peace. And some people need to keep going. I'm a guy who made this film and it inspired me to keep going, you know, so I'm not hanging up my art. But it's also a film that really doesn't judge the person who says, you know what, I've given it all I've got. I don't have anything left in me. I'm going to pivot and change. As one of the characters says, a broken dream can become a new dream. So it really gives permission to the person to really reframe this idea of success. And for mental health, if we live in this future that says my success is sort of around the corner, that's a really unhealthy place to live, versus being present, which is where peace is found, at least for me. And that's very much the type of message, if there is one, that we're really trying to portray. The being present and being at peace with the blessings we have and what we have right now is really the path to inner peace, hopefully.
You know, what I really liked about the film, too, was your definition of successes, because a lot of us find that, well, we got to become famous, we got to get in the news, we got to make, you know, this amount of money, we got to live in this neighborhood. So talk to me about, you know, writing the film and how you defined success, because the way you did it was just so beautifully done, and haven't seen it done in too many movies.
Well, that's well said. And the film, I realized as I was making it, it is about redefining success. It is about identifying a type of success that a lot of us put on ourselves, our careers, our ambitions, and then redefining what success means. As one of the characters says, it's not binary. It's not, you know, you either have it or you don't. It's an open field, and really redefining success as that way. My friend, business partner, he said, you know, some people just write a sticky note on the mirror when they kind of need some, you know, self-help, or they need to amp themselves up. He's like, you had to make a whole film about it. So it's very much, this is my sticky note on the mirror to myself.
Excellent. So let's talk about the other character in your film, which is your music, which is wonderfully done.
Thank you.
You know, when filmmakers start out, they think, oh, I could go to, you know, the Beach Boys or Johnny Rivers and just throw that music in and be awesome. But no, we have something called ASCAP and rights. And so talk to me about the decision making on where did you approach your musicians and how you put the music in the film, because I love the soundtrack. The soundtrack is perfect.
Well, thank you. And the soundtrack's something we're very excited about. And it was definitely something we planned from the beginning and wrote into the script, because I've made films before and I've dealt with music rights. And so credit to a few people. Kevin Daly, our music producer and composer and arranger and engineer, was instrumental in helping to curate the soundtrack. And then my musical artists, the people performing on camera, write songs. And some of the songs they sing are songs they wrote themselves. But they're songs that they own the publishing for. So we're not dealing with a few layers of a record label that's going to bleed our budget dry. And then a lot of the songs are old Christmas carols, which are public domain. And then the team of us who are musicians, we actually got together one weekend and wrote some songs original. I mentioned, you know, a few years back I was playing and wrote a little chorus about when do you gotta let the dream go. I was like, that would be a great theme song for this film. Guys, help me write this because you're better songwriters than I am. So we got together, fleshed that song out, and wrote the songs and really curated the soundtrack to really be organic to the story, and kind of like classic musicals, of which this film is not, but like a classic musical, the songs all help tell the story. Lyrically, they all actually are very thematic to where the character is going through. We had a great legal team. Sam Curfew, my attorney, attorney, and Mark Maxwell, our music attorney, and just making sure that everything before going into production, all the T's were crossed and I's were dotted, so that we wouldn't run into something that was going to hurt us, musically later. But also, we now have a soundtrack that the film created because we didn't have to license pre-recorded music. We recorded the music live on camera, which is legally a different process than actually getting sync rights to a song that already existed. We recorded new masters to these songs live on camera. So we have an incredible new soundtrack of new records, of new produced songs that we then edited and included in our post-production process, and then can release to the world in an amazing soundtrack when the film comes out. And of course, we're looking for a distributor now. We've got a great sales agent who's talking to buyers. So whenever the film comes out to the public, the soundtrack will too.
Talk to me about the selection of the Christmas songs, because there are a lot of Christmas songs out there. So talk to me about the methodology and why you picked particular songs, because those songs really fit really perfectly with the tone and the theme. And there's a lot of Christmas songs out there. You know that.
There's a lot of Christmas songs. We started by, just for Koontz' sake, relegating our list to public domain Christmas songs. But even that list is fairly wide. Then there was a quality. There's an inspiration to this film, which is an old viral video that you can find on YouTube of Bono from the band U2 and Glenn Hansard singing on the streets of Dublin Christmas Eve. And they're singing these old Christmas carols, which are old hymns. These are all very religious, sort of sacred songs. And they're singing on Dublin, surrounded by hundreds of drunken Irish people singing, "Oh, come, let us adore him." And there was something very sacred about that moment. And as a man of faith myself, maybe an unconventional faith, there was something very sacred that I found in that moment of these hymns being sung in the streets by drunken people. And I wanted to capture that sacredness in the film. And to do that, I chose these Christmas songs that have that sacred hymn quality to them. So it adds this layer of, I think of On the Waterfront, Carl Malden, when he's talking in the streets and he's like, "This is my church," here in the streets. And in the same way, a pub at midnight full of drunken, carolers singing songs like "Oh Holy Night" or "The First Noel" or "Oh Come Let Us Adore Him" become sort of a sacred framing which fit the setting of December, but also adds a layer that was important to me that I think adds a richness and depth to the film.
What has the conversations been like with people who've seen the film and, other festivals and screenings that you've been at?
I've been blown away by how well received it's been. We've had screenings at other festivals, great audiences. We've had reviews coming out, and we knew we were taking a risk with a story that was very simple by the dramatic stakes being internal. It's not a guy who's dealing with external stakes. There's not an overt villain. The tension is internal. It's the struggle that feels life or death for artists, which is, am I going to make it? And I knew not everyone was going to be on board for that. If you were an artist, you identified with that, you'd be all in. But if you weren't, you might find it a little slight, it was nice. And I was prepared for a kind of a 50-50 split. Thankfully, it's been, more of a, 75-25 split. Certainly some people like it, they enjoy the music, but they don't necessarily connect with sort of a lack of external stakes. But everyone who's seen it, who sort of lived that tension, has come up to me and just said, "This spoke to me on such a deep level." And even industry people who are used to sort of the antagonists of their films, they would say there was no assholes in the movie. There's a lot of characters who you think are being primed to be antagonistic, and at the end of the day, it's people just trying to help the next guy along. And they were like, that is a breath of fresh air. That it's just sort of like it's people just trying to figure it out, and everyone's sort of around them to help, which honestly reflects real life. At least for me, everyone in my life, no one's out to get me, no one's out to subvert me. They're all trying to help me along, and I wanted to show that, and that's not something you really see in a film. So I've been so just grateful that the response has been overwhelming to see that, because whenever you make something, you're going for something, you want someone else to see what you see, and so whenever someone connects and they get it and they see what you see, there's just nothing better.
Awesome. Lastly, what are the website and socials that we can follow the film on, but also to follow you because I know you're very busy.
Bad Theology is my production company, and at Bad Theology is our Instagram, which is the official Instagram for the film. So we're posting all of our details at Bad Theology, Instagram, Facebook. BadTheologyPictures.com is our website. So just follow Bad Theology, and you will be up to date on the film. And when we get a buyer and release it to the public in the coming months and play other festivals, that'll be the first place to know.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Deb.